Hey guys, welcome back to Leopard Geckos. I'm G. You know what? Last week we showed you how we build our New Caledonian baby enclosure and our subadult and juvenile enclosures. You guys are killing me. Now, based on our room tour, everybody wants to know how we set up our tubs that go in our VE6 racks that we showed you a couple weeks ago on the tour. So that's what we're going to do today. Maybe eventually you guys will want to start seeing geckos and I won't have to build stuff. Until then, we're going to do something again on the table. Don't forget, links are available for most of the stuff we use in our Amazon storefront, Leopard Geckos. All of our merch is available at leopardgeckos.shop. Don't forget to check it out. And this shirt, it's one of our most popular actually, is available for 10% off until next video launches.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
All right, here we go. So remember, we did the tour with our VE6 racks. We still have 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 8 of them. We still haven't built the 9th and the 10th. That's coming up soon. Kind of been procrastinating on that. But as we talked about in the room tour, those are 11 quarts, and that's what we put our adult females in. These large ones, these are 23 quarts, and that's what we put our adult males in. And then the smaller ones, you can actually, there's a couple missing right now because they're on the table, so I can show you a little closer. But the smaller ones where there's 3 per shelf, that's what we put our hatchlings in, and those are 8 quarts. So that's what we have in front of us. This one is the larger one. This is the one that the adult males go in. These are 23 quarts. Again, not a whole lot of height in here, but remember, African fat tails and leopard geckos are terrestrial, and they're actually very terrible climbers. It's dangerous for them to have a lot of things to climb on because they're not real good at it. So you don't want them to get hurt. You don't need a whole lot of space. This is the 11 quart. This is the one that we put our adult females in. And some of our juveniles, you know, as our hatchlings start to grow, they get big pretty fast. So some of them end up graduating into this before they ultimately find their new home. And then our hatchlings start in these 8 quarts. We do generally start our hatchlings out where we'll put clutch mates together. So there will be 2 geckos in these little 8 quarters for a while until they start to get a little bit big, or if one starts to rapidly outgrow its sibling. Then we'll have to separate them and they'll each have their own 8 quart enclosure. One of the other questions that came up was not just about the tubs and the tub size and the flexibility in the VE6 racks, but bowling pin holes. How do we have symmetrical bowling pin holes across all of these? Well, that's one of the things we're going to go over today. We have a brand new 23 quarter here that doesn't have the bowling pin holes in it yet. The supplies we need for this to be able to make the bowling pin holes is we need a Sharpie. Not really, but I like them to be symmetrical. Soldering iron. They make these all kinds. You can get these at any hardware store, any big box hardware store. You might even be able to find these at Walmart. You can definitely get them on Amazon. I have a couple on our Amazon storefront that we recommend. They have corded, cordless. Really inexpensive, so it's a great way to melt through plastic instead of drilling through plastic, because when you drill through plastic it kind of creates a jagged edge. These just go through like butter. So I'm going to turn that on while I continue to talk, so it'll turn green when it's completely hot. This is just a little piece of cardboard. About 3 or 4 years ago I cut a piece of a box, drew lines on it to try to measure out my perfect bowling pin spacing, and then I just used a little hand hole puncher and the 6 holes in it so it looked the same. And then on every one of these it's the exact same template that I use for every one of these bins behind us. That's why they all look relatively symmetrical. Although I bet they're off a little bit because I don't measure. I just kind of eyeball it, because when you get in a new rack and you got to burn air holes in all of them, measuring is just not a luxury. You just kind of got to eyeball it. And the reason we put these air holes in it, you don't necessarily need them because these aren't airtight. you know, you can see there's a little bit of a gap on the top of each one, so they're not airtight. What it's for is really to vent out the humidity, because you don't want a whole lot of humidity in these, particularly for leopard geckos. Now you do see in ours right now that there is a bit of condensation on here. It's because yesterday was cleaning day, and we cleaned all of these racks yesterday. So when we clean, we respray the respray the moist hides. So there's a little residual water from cleaning, and then the moist hides are all freshened up with new water. So ultimately what you end up with is a little condensation. That'll stay there for a day or two, and then it'll dry back out. So they'll get a couple days of higher humidity, and then the rest of the week they'll just be at ambient room humidity. All right, this is our template. It's been in use for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now. I've never patented it or copyrighted it. Let me put the little TM and the little C on there. So now it's copyrighted. So now you can't steal my template. You got to come up with your own design. So the holes, you know, again, I just kind of drew them out. So I'm just going to put a little bit of a mark here in each of the 6 holes with my Sharpie. Now the template goes away. Now I pick up the soldering iron. It's hot, and it'll melt right through these just like butter. 1. And I lost count. I think that was 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. And last one, 6. Done. All right, so there you go. 6 through, just like a bowling pin setup. Now be careful with your soldering iron, because some of that plastic melted, and it's still gonna be on there. You can see it smoking. You certainly can't wipe that off right now because it's hot. So make sure you turn your soldering iron off. I like to unplug it to make sure that it is absolutely off. And then be careful where you sit that, because that is still very, very hot and can catch on fire. And some of that plastic will probably drip off of there. So if you want to maybe, you know, sit it off to the side over there. I didn't want to put it on that paper towel because it's hot and it would likely catch that paper towel on fire. All right, so our holes are now in here, and what's cool about this using a soldering iron versus using a drill is these are melted. So, you know, they're nice and smooth to the touch. They're not rough, don't have to sand them. And they're symmetrical because of my copyrighted template. And they look the same on all. What else goes in these setups? So here, let's start with the 11 quart adult female enclosure. So what we have in here is, let me pull these out real fast. So what's cool, oh no, I dropped it. What I love about these is, again, Bounty Selecta size. Look at that, perfect, right? 2 of them perfectly in there. This is just a Ziploc container. They're square, they fit perfectly in these 11 quarts. In the adults, well, they can't be medium large. I think they're medium tall. Anyway, we'll put a link up. Because for the adults we use something similar, except they're not square, they're rectangle. So these get a mix of, this ends up acting as a moist hide and a lay box. So we put these in both males and females. And we use a mix of about equal parts of tropical soil, equal parts of eco earth, cocoa fiber, and then we throw in some vermiculite just to help control the moisture and maintain the moisture. These holes, you see these in videos a lot where they're all jagged and cut because people use razor knives or whatever. So going back to our last video, we use a hole saw. You can use a 2-inch hole saw, but a 2-inch will cut a little low. So then when you go spray your water in there, some of your water and your dirt will spill out. We like to use an 1.5 inch hole saw to cut these in. Now, this is a little flimsier plastic than cutting through those Sterlites. So you will lose some of these when you're cutting your hole in. Again, I like to put the lid on, I like to hold it, and then, then you just gently drill your hole through. Be patient. You don't want to just rush it through because you'll break the plastic. You got to be prepared. You're going to throw a few away every now and then. But at the end of the day, I think you end up with a much nicer, cleaner looking hole, and you can take a little piece of sandpaper and you can just run it on there. So that goes in, filled with substrate. We like these little glass dishes. We use these. I think it's made for aquariums. There's a link also on our Amazon storefront, but we like to set that in there with some calcium in it. We use these little mealworm lip dishes. That's what we put our mealworms in, and then we just use these little plastic containers. These come with those lips on them. I don't like the lips, so I ditch the lips, and then those go there for water. That's your basic setup for an adult female. For a hatchling or clutch mates, a little bit different. Problem is, can't really find one of these that fit in there. These don't really fit in there, although you could put it in like that and then spray it. So we don't. We kind of go through the process of folding them, and you just kind of get used to where you need to fold them. It's about a third or so. So we fold them. And then you end up with 2 paper towels in there, like this. Babies poop a lot, so extra paper towels don't hurt. This is what we use for a hide. What this is this is 3-inch PVC black pipe that we cut into 6-inch sections, and then we also cut in half. That's pretty tricky, so we're not going to show that or talk about that because that's a bit risky. I'm sure you can find alternatives, or if you know somebody that has the right equipment, they can cut some of these pipes for you, but they fit in there perfectly. And then the babies get a food dish, same plastic dishes we use for water for adults, and then we use a little Strudy's calcium cap. I love these because they have a little foot on them and the geckos can't tip them over, so those are real nice. So we'll set those in there. We generally set it up like that because babies seem to love to poop in corners. So if I put their food dish in the corner, they tend to poop in their food dish and not eat their mealworms. So that's a baby. We will show you an adult male setup, which is very similar to that adult female setup, with some more room and some more space. And I tell you what, I think we're on week 3 now, and we have not pulled any geckos out. So let's actually pull some geckos out and show you what these look like in action. Let's look at a baby setup. Now, I just cleaned these yesterday, but I bet there's some pooping going on in here. There's some crickets. There's some dead crickets in here. So this little guy likes crickets. Maybe not so much anymore because he's got some dead ones in here. Wonder if he's just killing for sport now. Just put these crickets in there yesterday. Same thing I showed you before on the babies. They have the 3-inch piece of black pipe that's cut, 2 paper towels, food dish, calcium bowl from Strudy's, and a gecko. Hey buddy. This guy is a pretty cool looking little black knight fella. He's showing this goldy pattern instead of more of a yellow pattern. And again, no water dish in the babies because the babies, they get sprayed every other day. And he just got cleaned yesterday, so he had plenty of water yesterday. So that's his setup. He's getting close to being big enough to be out of there. This happens to be a female, it's one of our 2020 hatchlings. Nice white and yellow tremper. She's gotten a little big for that baby enclosure, so we had to upgrade her. But again, if you look at the setup in here, same thing we talked about. You have, well, of course, a gecko. You got the little Ziploc container. That actually looks like a 2-inch hole, so I was probably lazy and didn't want to change out the hole saw, so I put a 2-incher in that one. which I hate. I won't do anymore because there's not enough room down here. So when I spray down these moist hides or these lay boxes, the water ends up spilling out. I really like the 1.5-inch holes better. So from now on, I'm only going to use 1.5 inches. The little calcium bowl, mealworm dish, water dish, Gecko. So that's what you get in our adult females, and then our juveniles as they're starting to get a little bit too big for those hatchling containers. They end up in there. Let's look at an adult male. He just got cleaned yesterday and he made a mess. What Mr. Mellow has in here, I have no idea how that, I don't even know how that's possible. So look at the opening of this hide. Somehow he got his food dish in there. I don't even think that's possible. He must be magic. So in these male setups, the typical setup for these adult males, let me grab Mr. Mellow. The typical setup in here is a water dish, a food dish, a calcium dish. They have the same hide with substrate in it. It's a Ziploc with the hole in it, except it's the bigger one. It's the rectangle one instead of the square one. And it goes right there. And then we also use one of these hides that we put on the cool side. Now in these VE6 racks, the heat tape runs across the back. It's the warm part of the enclosure or the bin, and the front side's the cool part. So these guys actually get two hides. They get a cool hide and a warm hide. And I tell you, they even though the height, they feel very safe up there. So often when we pull out a bin, they're sitting up here just enjoying it. So that's Mr. Mellow. Let's see you, buddy. He's one of our breeder white and yellow trempers. Look at the spots on that fella. Love this guy. Say bye. All right, guys. That's it for this video. Check us out next week. Maybe we'll show geckos and won't have to build something. Please don't ask me to build something. Don't forget, like it, subscribe, share it. Thank you.
It sound right, boy.